Welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It's 9 o'clock, which means it's time for a Talk Magic. And today I am here with a legend in the British magical community, somebody who has been around for a very long time, bought the t-shirt many times over, the one and only Richard Pinner. Hey, Richard, how are you doing?
I'm ever so well. Thank you so much for asking me to spend some time with you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for actually for coming on the channel. I know you're busy, and we'll talk about this later on, but you're one of the magicians in the UK that have really embraced the virtual world in the last year, and so I know that you've remained. While a lot of us have just put our feet up and just spent the last year hoping for everything to end, you've been just as busy as you always have been. So thank you so much for finding time to come on the channel. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Yeah,
now,
it's been.
Oh, go on. Sorry, go on.
I was going to start talking about the transition to Zoom and online, but I'm sure you've got a plan.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that. And I also want to talk about the thing that is really creating a buzz in the magic community, which is your new magic product, which I was on the phone to Dave Bonsall the other day, and he said, you know, this is one of the best things I've ever seen, and this is going to be incredible. So I've got a lot to talk about, but just for those people that have been living under a rock and have no idea who you are, let's just do a bit of a recap of Richard Pinner. When did you get into magic, Richard? How long ago was that?
I was never not in magic.
Right. What's your origin story? Was it?
Yes.
Were you born with a magic wand in your hand?
Pretty much. My birth announcement was rabbit out of a hat. I can picture the thing that was in Abra. You know, I was announced in Abra because that's what you did. Nearly 50 years ago. My father was a professional magician for the bulk of his career. He turned pro in '68. Peter Pinner. He did entirely children's and family entertainment. Never felt he did take part in adult shows, but never felt happy doing cabaret. That was his thing. So my route is a traditional route into our odd business, which is I learnt the family business. Like so many children, I wanted to be like my father, and I got to be. I got to come into, I just didn't really choose to do anything else, is how I started. And when I first did my first, quotes, professional show at 17 years old, even though I had no personal experience, I knew a lot of what would happen. A child said something, I knew what the funny response was, because I'd learnt by osmosis over those many years.
And so you did your first professional show at the age of 17. Did you lean towards what your father did? So was it leaning more towards family entertainment at the beginning? Because now a lot of people know you as a corporate entertainer and a close-up and a cabaret magician. But was that what you did when you first started performing professionally?
Very much. So professionally, absolutely. I was entirely a children's entertainer. I already had ambitions because my other big influence getting to there, apart from my father, was Alan Shaxson. I wanted to do that too. I mean, he was so cool. Everything about him was he was the perfect cabaret magician. And indeed, when I did, quotes, adult performances at the Zodiac Magical Society in my teens and my young life, it could be a young Alan. It was everything out of his books. Yeah, it really was. But professionally, absolutely. Probably more than 95% children's entertainment to start with. And then because I had this blessed beginning, which I didn't know any different, of course, I only knew one model, which was, this is how you ran a children's birthday party. This is how you ran a magic business. This is how you did everything. I didn't need to do anything else because my father was doing it, as far as I was concerned, perfectly. Yeah. And it also meant I was protected because he would manage me, and did for 20 years, which meant all I had to worry about was turning up and doing the show. And outside of that, I could be creative and learn, which all takes time, all those things. I didn't have to worry about running a business or getting the gigs. But it meant, I lost my thread. Hang on. Completely lost my thought there. It's gone. About the shows and the...
You were able to focus on things other than performing.
Yes, well, no, just performing, really. I didn't have to worry about the business side. Oh, that was the other thing. Yeah, sorry. Which meant also, because I had this protection, he would only book me shows I could do. So I remember it was my 3rd year. So it was 21. We decided I turned full-time pro when I finished college. And so my 3rd year of being only a magician, full-time, not in education anymore, not in formal education anymore, was the first time we said yes to anything. If it was in my remit, not anything at all, but any of the kind of shows I did, I would have a go at. But until then, if a show came in that he knew I wouldn't be good in, and this was the key thing, anything that I wouldn't be good enough for his reputation, then he wouldn't book me. I think it's the way it worked, because I did really well being able to go out as Peter Pinner's son when I started. I did my first cruise in the summer that I was 21 years old, and it was because I was Peter Pinner's son. They knew I'd be fine. The agent was an old friend of his, someone he'd known since the 60s. So, in fact, it was waiting for me. He said, when you're 21, come and do this. Great. And the other way around, as I go on, it was a great pleasure for my father that he became known as Richard Pinner's father. Whereas when I started, I was definitely Peter Pinner's son. Yeah.
And do you find that, I mean, one thing that I always try and encourage performers to do is push themselves outside their comfort zone and try and do stuff that you're not able to do, because that's the only way you can improve as a performer. Did you find that because you were protected and you had a kind of a situation where you weren't put into kind of situations that were beyond your remit, did you find that maybe held you back in certain areas?
No, not at all, because I was very young and ambitious. So I wanted to do these things. I wanted to achieve. It takes much, much longer, in my experience anyway, to get really good at stage and cabaret, because you get to do it less. I was so jealous of the stories that Alan Shaxson would tell me of, in his busy times, he'd be doing his full cabaret show every Thursday, every Friday, and twice on Saturday, jumping between different hotels in London. And I didn't get to do that. I got to do a cabaret, especially back then, once a month, if I was lucky. Now, the best you can really hope for there is to rehearse enough to be as good as you were. You don't get better doing that. Whereas if you're doing 4 birthday parties a weekend, which I was back in the 90s, or if you're doing 1 close-up gig, you get 10 goes, 10 tables. Yeah. 10 before you get so much more chance to get good. I mean, 10 years ago now, I went out to do the Magic Castle for a week. You get to do 21 performances of the same 20-minute act. One of the pieces of advice I was given there is make sure you film Sunday night, because you'll never be that good again.
Yeah, it's very true, actually. That's really true. So what advice would you give people? Because one thing that I've spoken about on this channel over and over again is I've said that I think that when things go back to normal, it's very important that as many magicians as possible learn to perform on stage, because I think stage magic is going to be more popular than maybe close-up magic, because the term close-up, at least for a while, I think some people are going to have a bit of an issue with maybe a close-up magician over a stage magician. So what advice would you give somebody who's a close-up magician that wants to perform on stage? Because I know that you've done both successfully very, very well.
If you are already working as a table close-up magician, offer a 10-minute spot set, or even a 5-minute spot to start with, to finish off your part of the event as an extra. Don't charge for it. Then charge for it. Then make it longer. Then make it an option. And then your first, because that's all easy, because they all love you. So what the situation, I should explain why I'm suggesting this. The situation you're creating is there is a room full of people who love you. And if they don't, you're not ready for stage, go back and learn better close up. But you should be in a position where they all love you and you're walking out to say goodnight with something magical. You couldn't really ask for a nicer room of people to work to.
That is incredible advice. That is great advice. It really is. I interviewed John Archer on this channel recently, and he said that there's a world of difference between walking out on a stage where the audience is warmed up and they've already seen you perform close-up magic, and walking out on a stage cold and having to get that audience on side straight away. There's a world of difference.
Well, that was my next thought, which is your next, for that person who's transitioning from close up to stage, or wants to, for stage we mean cabaret in this case, walking out onto a dance floor mostly, the first big scary time is when they've never heard of you, they haven't paid to see you, you're getting between them and the bar, or them and the dancing, or whatever it is. That is a whole different, John's, of course he's right, it's absolutely right about that. But amazing, if you can, no one's ever heard of you, hopefully you get a good introduction, but maybe you're doing it yourself, voice of God. You go out and you nail it. That is the most wonderful thing. Having a table rocking is good, but if you can, when you can do a room of 200 people who have never heard of you, haven't paid to see you, and you are in their way until they've learned to love you, it is so much fun.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more. So how did you transition into close-up magic? Because obviously you talked about how you were protected by your father, and he was mainly a sort of a family and a children's entertainer. Obviously, as I say, we know you as a very high-end corporate close-up magician now. How did you push away from sort of the, or maybe not a push away, but how did you get involved more in close-up magic without having that mentor there to help you?
So we already had the my father's agency was very successful, built out of there only being one Peter Pinner. So he realized for doing the paperwork, he gets 15%, he may as well book other people. That was where the agency came from. But it meant that there were already requests coming in for all the work I wanted to do. And the beginning would be putting me in as a +1 for a gig that someone else could either cover or that needed help. And then you just have to start doing it. And the timing was, so this is the 1990s. Close-up magic has been established during the 80s as a new art form, really. I mean, it's around before, but it really already had a foothold. In London, certainly with Magic Moments, the restaurant, and other things that happened that meant it existed now. I was joining in. So all I had to do was put my hand up and say, can I please come and do that with you? You do get, that did mean I got taught and suggested some not suitable tricks. I don't mean rude. I mean, just mean they're not, because the world those magicians were bringing them from was standing at the bar showing some people some tricks afterwards, and not what we know as proper close-up. And then the big change in close-up magic for me was, so hang on, it was the first year I voted at the Magic Circle. So that means I was 20, I don't know, I was young, right? 20, 21 years old. The rules changed. Women were accepted into the Magic Circle for the first time. Faye Presto turned up. She quickly went from icon to peer, well, not to peer, to friend and mentor. And I was an acolyte of hers through the late 90s into the 2000s. She taught me tables and taught me London as well. And the big change for me into close-up magic was having that mentor, but one I didn't know even existed, let alone could try for, until I was fortunate enough to be in that friendship. And because she's ever so generous with her time and her skills, and she allowed me to be with her. And I spent hours and hours and hours watching. But also there'd be gigs she'd take me on as a roadie, effectively. Gigs would happen where either she knew she wasn't doing the whole room, or she was comfortable enough to say, why don't you go and do those ones over there? And if you don't, just tell me, I'll cover it later.
Yeah. And
that was the same advice same position that my father gave me when I first started performing. And he said, obviously you're practicing something new. If you're not comfortable with that new thing, just don't do it.
Yeah.
And this contradicts completely one of my dearest friends, John Vanderput. His attitude is, I'll do whatever we got ready. I'll try that tonight. He and I have very different attitudes towards the finishing off of performance pieces. But sorry, to answer your question, the what got me in and any good at tables and proper close-up was Presto.
So Here's a question. Obviously, you've talked about several mentors that you've had through your career. Your dad, Alan Jackson, Faye Presto. My question is, it's quite difficult these days for young magicians or newer magicians, because some people get into magic and they're not young, um, to find a mentor. I find not so much with the magic circle, but outside of the magic circle, less professional magicians go to the clubs. They're normally made up primarily of amateurs, which is great. But if you're wanting to take it to the next level, there's maybe not the experience there that you can draw from. And because everything is online these days, you can get into magic from YouTube and Facebook and Reddit and whatever it may be, and the Magic Cafe and all that. And you can be immersed in magic, having never met a magician live. You and I both know that having a mentor is very important. Is there any advice that you can give newer magicians to find a mentor in this day and age with the digital world the way it is?
Well, I'm guessing because I can see what happened retrospectively.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I was just carrying on and being, I was fully immersed in the magic world, and I was around, and it's what I wanted to do. And I know it's a strange thing to say. I didn't have to worry about making a living because I was.
Yeah.
There was already enough work coming my way. And when we're talking very, very young here, when you're 20 years old, your expenditure is much smaller, or what's the word? Your obligations are much lower at that age. So I can see what happened. I think be around, that's the hard part, but being around can be Zoom calls.
Yeah.
I think if anyone wrote to me and said, would you be my mentor? I would politely say no.
Mm.
You could see, I don't think you can ask. I think it needs to happen organically, and then you realize you've got one.
Mm.
Or you're being one. It shouldn't be a business arrangement. That's different too. Obviously, teaching is a valid thing as well, but not for this. I think try gently to get a couple of nuggets from someone whose opinion you value would be the start.
Yeah.
If someone wrote to me and said, I'm having a trouble with this, what do you think? Or what's your top tip for this situation? Well, then that I can give, because I know I can answer that. I would think I don't have the time to be a mentor. Mm. I wouldn't be surprised if I looked back and went, oh, look, I did. Yeah. Absolutely.
Completely understand where you're coming from. Again, great advice. So going back to your career, when did a lot of people know you as a very successful marketer of your brand? You know, it's something that you do really well. When did that happen? Because obviously you said that you didn't need to worry about marketing because your dad basically managed you and he had the agency. At what point did you kind of separate away from that and become Richard Pinner as opposed to Peter Pinner's son, and you got into a position where you had to go and find your own work? When did that all happen? How did that come about?
So there's 2 or 3 different things there. There were things I wanted to do with magic that my father never aspired to. So I enjoyed performing for magicians, and that meant conventions and competitions if I wanted to. So when I came up with kids cards, which went into my successful Magic Circle close-up competition, that was the springboard that allowed me to do international conventions. And at the time I had a friendship, I was friends with Hank Morehouse, and he is a very good person to have sorting those things out for you, because he knew everyone. He made the international connections with the trick and got me booked into wherever I wanted to go, really. It was great. I went all over the world doing conventions. And for that, you need to make that worthwhile. It's good to have some things to sell. That's part of that game. Back of room sales, as proper shows would talk about. And so that was a breakaway, if you like the term, he said, from my father's business, because he didn't do any of that and didn't want to. I had no aspirations to. So I was on my own doing that. But it was a very unconscious marketing for that. I was trying to do the best I can at performing and competing and creating. Because performing for magicians isn't as hard as people think. Magicians love watching magic done well. What they don't do is give you back the pub banter that I think a lot of amateurs are used to, fine, because they perform socially. That brings its own challenges. And a lot of close-up magicians are used to people in their own friendship group just being funny whilst you show them some tricks. Yeah. That's not going to cut it in a magic show for magicians, because they will politely and out of respect let you do your thing. And they want to see it done well, but if you're used to the gaps being filled by other people, well, you're not going to get that. And that's where I noticed it mostly when I wanted to learn cup and ball, which I did relatively late. I realized the reason that most magicians are rubbish at it is that they're not rubbish at it. They've just learnt it for performing for people. So as soon as they try and show it to their magician friends, their natural misdirection that they're just waiting for doesn't come. Yeah. So they're not actually bad at it. They just seem to be in that environment because, quite rightly, they haven't bothered learning that environment. When I saw Tommy Wonder do cup and ball, I'd already read books of wonder. I knew how it was done, and he still fooled me because he had nailed it for that environment. He knew where I'd be looking in the same way as we know what you can sense what a table's doing. Yeah. So that was the on the sort of magic for magicians side. And then the other part came much later. I was trying to work out, I think my father retired somewhere around, there's never been a more or less 2010, let's say. I'm not really sure. But he was still around in my life. So I absorbed running the business. And I knew how that business ran, so that was easy. I just carried on doing it. It wasn't until I think probably after he died that a number of things happened at the same time, which led me to thinking, what do I actually want to do? I've probably got 20 years performing left. What do I want to do in that? And I realized that the bit I wanted to do most and focus on was sometimes on a stage, but generally walking out on a dance floor for between 100 and 400 people and entertaining them for 45 minutes. That's what I want to do. And so I put all my energies into that. And it's that work over the past 5 or 6 years, focusing on that has been the first time it's been all me about me.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And now, and I think there's an important lesson in there, which is, ultimately do what you love doing. You've only got a certain amount of time as a performer. So, you see those magicians, you must have seen them as well. You can just tell they're going through the motions. They don't enjoy doing what they're doing in that particular environment. And I've spoken to so many magicians that go, I hate close up, but it's a gig, isn't it? And you're advocating, talking, find out what you love and put all your energy into making sure that you do that. It's great advice.
And not, I'm not saying to the detriment of because this is a job as well. So it's only if you can afford to. Whilst I was doing that, gigs still happened. So, I didn't say, this morning, another magician recommended me for a wedding later in the year. If that comes off, I'll go and do it. I just don't try to do weddings. I'm still happy to. They're great fun. People are full of joy. Leaving the house is going to be a bit of a bind to go and do a gig, but I realize we're going to have to do that at some point in the future. And I know we've discussed outside of the interview. I don't feel the need to do everything either. I will do a trade show if it's a more formal presentation. What I do, it's a hard no for me, is the traditional style of busking close-up magic trade show, doing the same 6-minute shows 40 times an hour all day. That is a real specialism, and it's one that I don't enjoy enough to even try and get good at. I did try and do it, and my habit has been, well, we've done them recently, has been more, I might sort the gig out and I might create some magic for it if that's what they want, or sort out the giveaways, but I'm much better off booking someone who's really good at that, or at the very least enjoys it. So, and then I don't have to do everything. I don't feel the need to.
And
No, I haven't done a full day's balloon modeling in 15 years. I used to do loads of those, and they were great then. But it's not something that fills me with joy anymore.
Yeah, I totally understand. A couple of things that I wanted to pick up on with what you just said, and the first is competitions. Do you have any advice in terms of entering competitions? Do you have to enter a competition in order to have a successful career? What was your reason for entering the competitions that you entered?
Okay, so I'll answer the easy one. You don't have to have anything to do with anything in the magic world to have a successful career. If your career is going to be performing for people, you can have a successful magic career having nothing to do with the public. There are people in the magic world who we suspect this is true of, right? So magic competitions, it's like doing an audition or passing a test, like a driving test, in different ways. So something like passing a driving test, you need to learn how to pass that test, not necessarily learn how to drive. That might come later, depending on your environment, your car, your style, and all that stuff, right? So you have to learn how to win the competitions. It's like learning how to do BGT or Fool Us. You don't necessarily need to fool Penn and Teller to have a great success on that show. You certainly don't need to win BGT to make a success of it. You need to go and do a good TV spot for those things. TV is different. So you need to work out what's needed in this competition. And the trickiness there is you probably don't know who the judges are. In fact, you almost certainly don't know who the judges are. You might be able to see what kind of things. I knew I couldn't win international. I couldn't take my close-up winning act from the circle and take it there and win. It was a very different competition and not for me. So I didn't even try, for example. There are things you can learn. And then the most important thing about being in a magic competition is, just like any audition, the very best you can do is walk off stage feeling that was me at my best. Yeah. Either it's good enough or it's not. There's no way you can affect that, and you shouldn't get grumpy about it. Be disappointed, but don't get angry. You don't deserve it. It took me 10 years, I think, to win the Magic Circle stage competition. I entered it from as soon as it started. Every year, I never even got placed in those years either. And every year, I thought of the winner. Yeah, they're worthy. I don't feel that I should have won over them. The year that I did win, Mark Shortland was there, and he nailed it as well. We both gave stellar. We both were really happy with what we'd done. I remember the relief that I'd finally managed to do it. I was gutted for him. I mean, that gutted was taken away a little bit because I actually ended up winning, but because he had put a lot of effort and done a really good performance, he would have been a deserving winner too. So that can be a sad thing about competitions. Now I'm telling stories. So yeah, my advice is all you can do is do your best, but you can get, you can get it wrong. One of my circle stage competition acts, I decided to go less normal Richard Pinner, charming, cheeky chappy performance. I did a bit more serious. I did the guns thing that I used to do at conventions, with the Russian roulette act. And the guest celebrity judge was the actor that plays Tony Stamp on the bill. And I now know he has a real thing about guns. So I was screwed before I started that year, but I'd made a commitment to this big theatre piece, and it turned out not, because previously I'd lost to illusion acts and much more theatrical pieces, and thought, right, I need to be less cabaret and more stage. Yeah. And that was the wrong year to do it. But yeah. What can you do?
But there's no way you could have known that, really, was there?
No, it was a roll of the dice, right? Yeah. Don't be bland was my idea. Yeah.
The other thing you said off camera, which I think is really important for people to understand, is if you enter a competition and don't place, people will forget about that. And that's very important to say, because I've met magicians, I'm never going to enter a competition because I'll never live it down if I don't do well. But
even if you place, you are the only one that remembers. People only know what's up on the winners board. Yeah. No, and but some people watching this may have been aware in the back of their minds that I won the Magic Circle stage competition. It's only important to me anyway. That I've won it is not important to anyone else. I bet none of them knew I had been in it and failed every other but one time.
Nope.
And the year that I didn't, I forgot to enter. What an idiot. No, I missed the deadline. I'd done it every time. No one cares. There's no harm to you at all. It's not the same risk as failing at BGT. That is a risk because they'll televise your failure.
Yeah, they will. Yeah, that's really good advice. Now, let me ask you a question. So you touched on this before, and I want to bring it up now. You talked about going to conventions, performing at conventions, and more importantly, having stuff that you could sell in as a lecturer. When did that come about? When and what made you decide? Because you're a successful performer. You're not having to worry about income. You're not having to worry about gigs. That's not something that you have to worry about. Why did you decide to start releasing magic? Because obviously, for those that don't know, Richard has the Little Shop of Magic. Is that right? Little Shop of Magic. And you as a creator, if we have what we call I have this scale that I kind of give people, which is the Canadian scale of creativity. And at one end, you've got Jay Sankey, who releases absolutely everything with completely no filter at all. And some of it is terrible and some of it is great. And at the other end, you have Richard Sanders, who only releases top quality stuff. And it's always amazing. When we look at the Canadian creativity scale, you are right there in the Richard Sanders section. You don't release that much stuff when you do it really good. So what made you decide to become a creator of magic and start lecturing and selling this stuff?
And in my first lecture, I think I might not even have been a member of the Magic Circle when I did my first lecture there. Oh, lecture sounds enough like Alexa. She's talking to me. So I'd seen the process, right? I'd seen people lecture because you do, and I had ideas. I had lots of ideas. I wanted to share them, and one of the benefits of having a long in the tooth magician around is, I mean, I invented Alcaran's do as I do trick at one point and showed it to my father, and he said, "You know what that is?" I said, "No," and he said, "But here's the good news. It means you're thinking the right way. That's not yours. It's in a book. Go and read the book. But well done. It's a good idea that someone else has already had." And that is the most painful thing about being, especially being young, about being a creator, is when you realize it's not your idea. You go, oh. And it happens all the time. We see it in magic, either new ideas or what also happens, I see, and this is healthy as a performer, someone will buy or make or read an effect, they'll perform it so much they feel ownership over it, which is healthy as a performer. You should feel that. That doesn't mean it's yours to then republish. It's still what it was. You might have some comments on their trick. That's a valuable step forward. That's fine too. So back to your questions. So in the early 90s, I was doing this already. It was always part of what I was doing, because the creating magic just happens. I like making magic. Some of it goes into my act. I tend to not to discuss those bits that go into the act. Some bits I just published because they're not stuff. And then I can remember the moment I was standing in a dealer hall. It must have been at the IBM convention, and had the idea for kids cards. I don't know what made me think of it, but it meant I was in the right place. I bought the blank cards the blank backs and the blank faces that I needed. When I got home, I was able to hand make the first one. Showed it to John Gordon. I mean, I showed it to a bunch of people. When I showed it to John Gordon, he told me the drawings were too good. Had to go and hand make another one immediately. That is the problem with having good friends you show stuff to, is that you have to then have the take a deep breath, maybe leave it overnight, and realize that all that work you've done is now to be done again. That we've all had that. The worst version of it is if you haven't saved something, but sometimes it's because things need to be changed. And that was the touch paper to allow me to go, and because I wanted to perform on stage, and the stages that I had that I could ask to go on were magic club magic shows, competitions and conventions. I didn't, because of my family, my father. He wasn't immersed in that world of variety because he was doing family entertainment. It's a very different world. So finding those things, these are the access I had to say, please, can I have a go? And they go, what do you do? And they ask someone else, and they go, oh yeah, he can come and do that here. Just like being, being a two-boy magic illusion duo would be good. Being an animal act, being the juggler is great at the Magic Convention. Being only 22 and still being able to do 15 minutes in their magic show, that was really bookable.
Yeah, that makes sense. And kids cards, I actually talked about this product on the on the channel earlier, a few weeks ago. Well, I've actually mentioned it several times. I genuinely think that it is the greatest gaffed deck in the entire history of Magic. I don't think that there's a better. It's just perfect because it has that built-in hook line that brings people back to their childhood, that you can take in so many different directions. It's super visual. You've got that wonderful moment where you're apparently reading their mind. You bring it back full circle. It doesn't need a table. It's instantly resets. It's visible to everybody. It's completely different to anything else out there. Like, it's perfect, Richard. It's absolutely perfect.
Thank you.
It really is. No, go on. I was just waxing lyrical about how amazing that trick is.
Until recently, it was completely different, but that's a different thing. I hope I one day have an idea that's good again. Kids cards. I agree with everything you've just said. It is a great idea. It has all those elements. I've fallen in and out of love with it. So my honest review of kids cards is, I think everything you've just said is true. However, I get physically tired performing it. It's so the way I do it, it's like a monologue from start to end. There's practically no interaction apart from choosing the card. So it's 3 minutes of just talking. So I'll do it for a while, and then I'll get tired of it and have to leave it for a bit, and then come back to it a few months later because it's so wordy. But it is a great trick. I've seen people in loads of different ways. I do like. I'm not going to change the way I do it, but I do love the slowing down of it and the selected card going onto their hand for the first transformation, for example, is really nice. It's a great trick. It's been done all over the world. People tell me when it was being demmed and sold at one of the Disneylands for a while, which was a nice thing as well. It
is absolutely great. Like the other routines that you've created over the years. Can we touch on some of those?
Of course.
Obviously, you've brought out the other one that springs instantly to mind as an iconic Richard Pinner trick is your card to impossible location using those envelopes. I think that's I remember seeing you perform that at a lecture many years ago, and I just immediately handed. I was like, "Here, shut up and take my money." That was amazing, and I still have it over there. I still perform it today. It's great.
PET, I called it, plastic envelope thing. Was quite disappointed then to discover that the plastic it's made in is not a PET plastic, which is a little bit annoying, but it's a polypropylene. That can't be helped. It was a solution. It was a solution to a problem that presented itself that turned out to be worth sharing. The full story is that John Vanderput and I lived together and were making our livings pretty much from being in part of a restaurant chain. Chain is the wrong term for these restaurants. A group of restaurants is a nicer way of putting it. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights if we weren't busy in different ones, right? So that's where the everything to envelope routine evolved. John was using a traditional Jerry O'Connell wallet with big red envelopes. The line about the red envelope came from him. I remember that. It's a bit of a Lennon and McCartney thing. It's very much a homogenized joint creation, but I remember bits that were his idea. And he would gimmick those by hand every day for them. I didn't want to carry a wallet, so I made a card to envelope loading in the back of a moleskin pad. Was what I used inside jacket pocket. The line I used to use was This pad is full of all my good ideas. As I flicked through this empty pad, got a little laugh, but it was enough time to then get the thing open and get the envelope out. That wore out. Didn't want to make another one. So I sat down to solve what is the most efficient envelope loading I can do. Now, I did make an invisible one. I was go into my pocket and pull out an envelope. And almost immediately someone said, you just had the envelope open in your pocket. You go, yeah, what I did was much cleverer than that, but you're absolutely right. That would work. So I realized that the envelope needed to be out of my touch somehow, which is what the wallet does so perfectly. A traditional card to wallet does that brilliantly. And the pet was the solution. We all know what these pocket files are. We're used to them. The lovely sound of the popper shows it's secure. Yeah. And then I made I made one for me by hand out of a A7 poly file. I used that and it worked. And then what led to it being having a product was to make it properly, I had to make 600 of them. It was like Batman or buying his helmet. I couldn't just buy one. Mm. So that was the last proper thing I put out, actually, Pet. Must be 11 years ago, I guess.
Yeah.
Because as you said, I don't try and create magic for magicians, but some of the ideas I come up with are worth sharing, and some of those require product.
Yeah. Well, what advice would you give wanting to create, because it is the holy grail, isn't it? But for magicians to create either their own products for themselves in their own act or to ultimately sell. As somebody who's done both many, many times over their career, do you have any advice on inspiration and the creativity process?
So for me, I work best when there is a defined problem to solve. So Pet was my I like the design process. So coming up with different ways of solving something is the way I think, and writing those down, sketching them helps me. And I went through many different solutions before I got to the Pet. For a while, I thought I spent ages trying to get a card through the back of a full-on hard-backed moleskin reporter's pad. And that 3mm thickness of card is just too much. It was a pain. I got loads of what I thought was going to be a new thing made up. They're thin, the moleskin pad, which then are in a bag because that never became a thing. When you're making, especially prototyping or making for your own act, it's quite easy to become an expert in a process or a technique for a very short period of time, because then it's solved and then you use that. 5 years later, that might wear out and you've got to learn it all again to make it again, because you haven't used that skill again. Now, in these it reminded me, because in these pads, I had to learn the correct way of turned out to be a welding process I used for ribbed elastic for it, and what are they called? Not press stud fasteners, but the rivets with holes in.
Oh yeah, I know them.
The kind of thing like you might have on a posh belt. I was using those. I wouldn't know it. I would have to learn I've got the stuff still. I'd have to learn all over again next time I need those processes. And my other advice would be do it a lot. Don't make yourself. Just have it happening all the time. I can go for weeks without coming up with anything creative.
Yeah.
Right now, the thing that's bubbling in the back of my mind is, before I go back to proper live corporate cabaret, which for me is the second week of September, now is the time to maybe redesign the onstage table, because I've got this time. So my current one has been in use 3 years, although one of those years has been off, so that doesn't really count. And I know now I can design it around those tricks. I don't have to design a box that can take today's 6 favorite tricks. I know what that act is.
Yeah.
Which helps. And that takes a long time to know that. I do a similar thing in close-up though. When I do tables or mingling, not that I do it so much now, but when I do, I only take the 4 tricks that are that routine, and then I'll have another 3 to 6 tricks that I know work well together, and I'll go and reset and do that. I don't carry a lifetime's worth of magic and pick some to do for that group.
Mm, yeah, that makes sense. That's really good advice as well, actually. Which brings us on to, which I want to talk about in a second, the new product that is taking the world by storm that we mentioned at the very beginning. But before we talk about that, I'd like to ask you one other question, which is virtual shows.
Mhm.
Because I have had so many questions on this channel, because as you know, I've been an advocate of virtual shows this last year. And I get so many questions about, should I do virtual shows? Shouldn't I do virtual shows? How do I do virtual shows? Now that it's seeming that after a year of COVID, we're coming close to opening up and we're coming close to actually getting back to a certain degree of normality, do I need to do a virtual show? Can you kind of in a 2 or 3 minute kind of thing, can you kind of give the viewers of, because you've been very successful with virtual shows over the last year, and I know you did the first one very early on in April, didn't you? In fact,
Yeah,
at time of filming, aren't we approaching your Zoom anniversary?
we are indeed. I have to check the diary. It was April 10th or 11th. I did my first online show, and let me get to that story in a second because it answers the bigger question. The smaller question: do I have to? No, of course you don't. At this point, it's only if you want to. We touched on it earlier. I don't do trade shows, certainly in certain environments. I don't try and do weddings or try and do tables and mingling, but I'm happy to in those cases. I think the online shows will now remain forever, but only if you want to. You don't have to. Some people I know have had to survive and can't wait to stop. I will keep it. I love it. For part of the fact, I really have enjoyed the process of creating that show, and I have a show now that I'm really happy with. I have 5 products for online shows, 3 of which are pretty much never used, but they have places to sit on that pretty PDF. I have 2 products that are popular, and the most popular by far is my full show, which is me standing up with the full tech that I run, 45-minute show, as if I was the same ambition as if I was walking out onto a dance floor. Last April, it was my wife's laptop on the top of 2 whiskey bottle containers on the kitchen table with this red curtain behind me, because the request was from actually my first one was a gig that didn't exist until then. It was an existing client came back to me and said, I'm organising my sister's 40th birthday. It's all gone horribly wrong. How can you help? I'll show you some tricks through a screen. And that really was, what do I do that I know? I understand the rules of television. So what can I know that would work on TV and have interaction? That was my beginning. The next shows were existing gigs that were in the diary, and they said, well, we still want to have our event. How are we going to do it? And it was that very much that attitude of, we're all in this together. What on earth can we do? And my attitude towards the business was no harm, no foul, no one's working. Let's do a virtual show or have your money back, whatever it is. I don't mind. There's nothing we can do about it, was my attitude. And I got my first virtual show reel out at the start of May, realizing that this is a thing now. The industry has taken a lot longer to catch up than I was ready for, sadly. And because I kept my because it was now the market that I was best attuned to. I think I've done half a dozen kids shows online. I haven't advertised them against some people who have asked, existing clients. Annoyingly, I can't use I use green screen for everything. Can't use green screen for a kid show because there's no way I can't use the color green and some yellows in a show. It's just not, that doesn't work. So that's frustrating, but not a market I've gone for. I stayed business to business, is what I'm used to. And that led to the busiest December I've had since the late 90s. It was like being out doing close-up gigs again for mindless corporates, because when you could do a lunch and 2 evenings, those ridiculous December evenings. And busy for me is different for busy for you. I realize that. I did my full show 25 times in Q4 last year.
That's great.
I was hoping to do 10 more. No, sorry, no. I was trying to do 10 more. I was hoping to do more, obviously, and couldn't believe how busy it got. with my normal routes, my two main routes for work are the intermediary, the event organizer or the executive assistant who's been asked to put the event on, and other magicians for whom I am a trusted recommendation. Those are my two main sources of business, and has remained so. If you're going to do it, there's so much resource now about. Don't worry so much about the tech. My big advice is just do it. I've bullied a couple of friends who think it's too overwhelming, and I realize why it's too overwhelming, because groups like the Zoom Magic and Mentalism group, which is great, have so much information on them. You think there's no way I can even think about that. All you actually have to do is turn your computer on, get some friends together, and show them some tricks. That is Zoom Show 1. After that, you will learn a lot. And just like the first time I got this advice was for building a stereo, and then it's the same advice for creating your toolkit, and it's the same for doing a Zoom show. You do it, and then you work out which bits are broken or need replacing, and if you have to, spend some money on, and you do those as you go. I'm now well set up, but I didn't splurge. My first decent camera was an old iPhone with an app, because that had a brilliant lens on it. I could go on and on about that, but I won't.
That's great advice. And again, it comes back to it. Just do it. I think that's the perfect advice, not just for getting a virtual show, but also everything that you've talked about. If it's something that you like the idea of, just do it. If you don't, then don't. It's as simple as that.
Just don't advertise for your first cabaret that you're competing with Graham Jolly, because you're not. Find your own place to go and do that. Have an ambition for him to worry about you in the marketplace, but don't advertise that that's what you do, because you don't yet.
Absolutely. And like you said, off camera, you're planning on keeping Zoom as an option, because you think that moving forward, although live entertainment is going to come back, there are going to be a selection of people, corporates, whatever it may be, that are going to want virtual entertainment. And
yes,
nice to have that string to your bow.
I've not done any public Zoom shows, and I've only done a few private ones. They will both, I think, stop on a knife edge as soon as people can go and have a beer.
Yeah,
there'll be no cause for a public Zoom show, and a little bit less. I think there'll be a few private celebrations. I did a 70th birthday for she's a managing partner at Deloitte, which is a client of mine, which is how that private gig came about. And because she's had a big life, her 70th birthday was attended by people from all over the world, which she wouldn't have got in the real world. People will travel across the world for a wedding. They don't for a significant birthday. So I think there might still be some of those in the future, but not so many. There certainly won't be. I know people have had a lot of success with five 20-minute shows a night type thing. That will stop, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree with you. But corporates, I think, is where it's probably still going to continue for considerable time.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a challenge maintaining that. But now, a year in, those experienced bookers within major corporations who knew, if I'm having a 3-day conference for X hundred delegates, I know my budget is X pounds per head per day, how am I going to spend that? Some of it's on the turn that comes after dinner on the middle night. They didn't know what that meant for this. They do now. They're getting the hang of it. So sending stuff out is happening all the time. People want that, and will continue to, I think. And they're getting the hang of, okay, I know that it's going to cost this much per head per day for my online conference still. So it'll be much easier for the future of online shows to find your place in the world, because you'll know where your show and your market share is, because they're getting the hang now of how they're spending it.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you. Right. Now, the moment that everyone's been waiting for, because there is a big buzz about this new product that you're bringing out, Richard. And how it came on my radar is, first of all, I saw a sponsored ad on Facebook.
Oh, good, that worked.
Yes. I watched it and I was like, "Ooh, this looks good. I'm going to need to speak to Richard about this." And then the next day, I was on the Prop Dog Live, which is the brilliant show, and Dave Bonsall was talking about it. And Dave is such an amazing guy. He knows, and he's not afraid to say if something's good or something's bad. And he was raving about it. And then I rang him the next day, and he was like, "Oh yeah, this is amazing. This is absolutely brilliant." And then since then, I've seen so many people talking about it in Facebook groups and Facebook forums. And like you say, I think one of the reasons is you're a respected performer, you're a respected magician, you are a very respected creator, and everybody knows you only bring stuff out if it's good. Like 11 years since your last product, this is a big deal. So can you tell us, A, what it is, B, why you're now creating something after 11 years, C, when it's going to be available, all letters of the alphabet. Give us the skinny.
So the why now is I stepped back from that part of the magic world a dozen years ago. It was a bit less than that I stepped back. 8 years ago, I got married. My life changed a bit and a lot. I certainly didn't want to be traveling the world anymore, and that's the driving force behind conventions. So I stopped thinking that way, really. And I got a bit fed up with the nonsense of magic. And mostly producing magic for, at least at the rate that I do it, producing magic for the magic world is more about the fun of it and that it's nice for your ego, if you get it right. It's not, I should spend more time getting on stage is a more economic use of my time, is the point I guess I'm trying to make. Why now? Well, because I'll show it to you in a minute. It's another one of those things that's very hard to make one of. The prototyping for this has been torturous and expensive. And when I showed it to people, their response was, "When do I get mine?" So I thought, okay, well, I'll investigate what mass production looks like. I've had to tell everyone quite quickly, because this time round, I didn't want to fund it myself, which is what I've always done in the past.
You've crowdfunded it, haven't you?
Yeah. And is the term we understand. It turns out that the best way to do it is to manage it is pre-orders, but you effectively crowdfunded. No one's been charged, and they won't be till I press go, which I'm happy to say I'm going to now. We are successfully funded. It is going to happen, which is very exciting. And it was solving a problem. I was playing with the trick that we think of. The source of is in Erdonase. Flick through the cards, think of one. I know what it is. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, if you go back to Erdonase, the 4 methods he's got there are all so dodgy. None of they would all work, but not a lot.
I think sometimes we look back at older magic books with rose-tinted glasses. I remember just recently revisiting Bobo's and looking through it and thinking, okay, there's a lot of stuff in here that just isn't really great, if I'm being completely honest with myself.
Yeah, that was I want to learn card tricks. Read the Roll Road. I want to learn coin tricks. Read Bobo. It was rhetoric. There is a lot of good coin magic in Bobo, and there's a lot of good card magic in Roll Road. That shouldn't be your first book. You need to have so much magical knowledge to understand that. Even how to hold the cards for a riffle shuffle, which is so easy to show someone, is really hard to understand in chapter 1 of Roll Road. Mm-hmm. It's that should be it's gone. Roberto Jobbi, Card College. Oh yeah, that is a beginner's guide to card magic.
100%, especially with the new Card College lights and the amendments that he's done on it. So
Card College Light, that's where you go to if you need to do a trick at your magic club.
Absolutely, it'll fool them all.
yeah,
it really will.
Yeah. And he even says in it, this section of this route, start here, end here, get the magicians. He's noticed that in the book as well, which is part of the fun as well, fooling each other, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this came really quickly.
What's the name of it, by the way? Just very quickly.
Forced Focus.
There you go. Thanks.
Which, apart from describing it well, is a nod to Force of Thought, which was Charles Reynolds' thing that we know, which is the oh, hang on, this is public, isn't it? Look up Force of Thought by Charles Reynolds. It's another good method in this world. That's worth doing.
Okay.
And this came really quickly afterwards. It's been through some amendments and improvements, but essentially it hasn't changed since that idea I had within an hour of solving the problem. But not an idea I would have had if I hadn't tried to solve the problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shall I show you a trick?
I would love to see a trick. Yeah.
I'm going to show you a version of the trick that no one's seen yet. You're the first person, certainly outside the house, to see. Because the thing about this, the forced focus, is actually it's a principle. It was devised as a trick, and the trick it was devised as was 4 people on Zoom. They each think of a card as I flick through. I read their minds. That was and it does that. Absolutely does that. But I've realized, and I'm still realizing, it does so many more things, which are great fun. So a version of which I'll show you now. So I'm going to flick through these cards for you. I want you to think of one of them. And it needs to be one that's there, because this is about 48 cards. So I'll flick through. Think of one of them as I flick through. If you don't get one, I'll flick again. That's fine. Okay? Do you have one in mind? Good. I think with my lucky red envelope, well, I should tell you the story of the envelopes. With my lucky red envelope, I've tried to predict the card that you might think of out of all of those. Please tell me, which card are you thinking of?
5 of clubs.
Boom.
That's sick. That's awesome. Wow, that's great.
So it's so many different versions, things you can do with it. Some we're still discovering. One that's come up recently, which is a brilliant idea that won't work on Zoom. This has to wait till the real world. Is same idea. Someone thinks of one of the cards in the deck. If anyone, just like now, people watching this may not have chosen the 5 of clubs. That's its great benefit, right? It's not a single card force like the original. So in real life, someone thinks of a card. Quite where they're going to name their card, I'm not sure. It depends. I won't, till I perform it, I won't know. They don't have to. They don't really have to at any point. But theatrically, there's going to be a good time when we learn what their card is. We look through the cards. Their card has vanished from the deck. Oh, sorry. They're holding an envelope. So it's this, but more so, right? They're holding an envelope from the beginning. They think of one of the cards. We look through. It's vanished. It's in their envelope. That's a good real life trick, right?
You're very, very good. Yeah.
Yeah. My current favorite version for online is what you just saw, but with a second person as well. So 2 people think of a card at the same time. Do a direct mind reading with someone, and then the other one as a prediction. Reveal it.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And just so you know, for the people that are watching this is not pre-set up. Like Richard said to me off camera before we started, would you like me to perform the trick for you? And I was like, yeah, perform the trick for me. It's not like he said, hey, Craig, do me a favor. Think of the 5 of clubs. Just because I know there's going to be people in the comments that say that, I want to make that perfectly clear. That is incredible. That is incredible. That is incredible. I wanted to
do it in real time, both because, well, I want to show off to you to see what you think of the trick. But also this version of it, I hadn't done under pressure before. I've done it to myself, and I showed it to my wife to check the time. Everything was kind of worked, but everything changes when you can't blink, doesn't it? When you haven't got that time. So that's a good thing. I've got a gig. Where are we now? In 2 days' time, I might knock something out and put that in just to test it properly. Because there was another trick I came up with for Zoom, which is a book test, which I thought was ever so clever. Well, it is clever, but that wasn't good enough, it turns out. Have I like the idea, the concept of book club. So I had a book in an envelope, and this is making use of what was then brand new, being able to use Nick and Craig's DFB twice, being able to do 2 different things on digital force bag. So I had, this is my new book club thing, and the idea was there's 25 or 50 of us, and we all choose 2 books, and we add them to the list, and then we pass them round. I think it's quite a nice idea anyway.
Yeah.
And so the first thing we look through, and it chooses the book. Someone chooses a number, you look through the thing, and it says Paddington Goes Abroad. Someone else chooses the number, you look at that, and it says June Gladwell, Chorleywood. Open up the envelope. Inside there is a book, and it is Paddington Goes Abroad. Brilliant. Tucked inside the front, there's an address label for the person I have to send it to next, and it says June Gladwell.
Perfect. That's
yeah, no one cares. Right? I did it in shows. Yep, I did it in shows, and I did that, and the reaction was, oh, yeah. What can you do, right? Because it sounds like such a great trick. So, yeah, that idea got big. Never mind. I'm happy to share the concept because it's probably my fault, because it does sound like it should work.
It really does. It sounds
yeah.
Yeah.
But sandwiched between a decent card trick and wiki test, it wasn't cutting it, you know.
Oh gosh. Well, you never know, dude. That's the thing. That's the point of creativity. You'll create something and you'll think it's the best thing in the world. I've bought tricks in the past and created tricks myself that I've fallen in love with, and I absolutely love performing it. And the audience just don't buy into it as much as they want them to. And I have to take it out because it's not hitting where I want it to go. And I feel really bad about it because I love performing that particular trick. But ultimately, it's the audience's sort of experience that's the most important thing.
I always wanted to do proper, like a blindfold test thought reading thing.
Yeah.
And great fun to learn. And at the time, Lee Earl was everywhere, so I was getting lots of that influence as well. No one believed that a child could have these powers, and also I hadn't really learned who I was yet. It doesn't suit me. I chat to Mark Paul and I chat about this. He's a proper mind reader.
Yeah.
I'm a magician who sometimes does some mind reading tricks, which is a very different attitude to what could be the same material. I worked on a 2 envelope test for ages and ended up what I've ended up with actually is recreating his 2 billet test, but with envelopes. I've now got a version that suits me. But again, I can't present it heavy. It just another miracle that happens near us type thing.
Absolutely.
That's another top tip for people starting is find out who you are. When Tim Shoesmith said to me, you know, you are on stage. Knuckles said no. He said, you're a 10-year-old boy playing with his toys. And we expanded that slightly, which is it's like I'm having the audience over on a play date. These are my toys. We're going to play. I'm not strictly holding to this for line by line and storytelling, but to kind of know who I am and my relationship with the audience is this is playtime. We're all going to have some fun together. Come into my world. It's kind of who I am on stage, even though I'm in charge. But that makes, once you know that, it makes life so much easier.
That's great. Very good advice. Very, very good advice. So when is it available? When are you going to, and can people pre-order it now? Like, what's the process? What's the price? What's that? Because I know that there's going to be people who are watching this that are going to go, oh my gosh, I need one of those in my life. You're looking at the first person that needs one of those in his life, to be honest. So
the sales pitch is, excuse me, littleshopofmagic.co.uk is
off screen right now.
Is my little home for just where I keep my 6 tricks. If people want them, it's available for pre-order at a 15% discount of, it'll be £35. I think it'll be $45, which ironically means it's slightly cheaper in America than it will be here.
Well, actually, Richard, I have more people watching this channel in America and Canada than I do the UK. So,
well, the exchange rate works in your favor at the moment.
That's good.
If you want to get the discount, the pre-order discount, order it now, and I will send it to you in America. But Murphy's are taking it, so it'll be everywhere soon after it gets properly released by manufactured. But I'm going to keep the pre-order open. My publicly, I've been saying shipping on the first week of May. I'm quite hopeful to be doing that the last week of April now. But making packs of cards takes 2 weeks. There's nothing I can get. I can't get around that. It's not like I can start making them and send them out as soon as they're ready. There is a process, and every time I've had a drastic change of something in the deck, I have to have a new pack of cards made. One deck. You know, it all takes a while. This process, even though it's an idea from this year. It was January I came up with the idea, and I realized I could have waited. I could have played with it and maybe had a couple made up for friends, and then in a year's time put out an hour and a half of material or a book with it. But I decided I'd rather share it, get it out there. Everyone can play with it. It is a big candidate for a Facebook group. We've already started that. There's only about 50 of us in it now, but come and join the Forced Focus Facebook group, because that's where a question was asked that has led to the idea that you can vanish the thought of cards. I built that in and hadn't realized it until someone else said, what if? And there's going to be so many good ways we're going to find to do this, both online and in the real world, as a community.
Perfect. That's absolutely amazing. So the link is at the bottom. You can pre-order now. And does that price include shipping to America, or is there shipping on top?
No, I've got really clever now. In readiness for Forced Focus, I upgraded my little shop from just a page of pictures to a WooCommerce site. So the shipping works out for all different places in the world. If I haven't, someone did this recently for Singapore. Singapore had got lumped in with rest of the world when it didn't need to. Then tell me and I'll add it. What I can't do is individually do all 207 countries or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Until they need to.
And while people are there, I'm just going to tell them right now, you want to pick up some of other Richard's products because they are all so clever. And if you haven't seen the kids cards, it really is, like I said, the best gaff deck on the market. There is nothing better. There really isn't. Okay, cool. So before we wrap this whole thing up, Richard, one last question, which is, what's next? Is there anything left on your magical bucket list? Like I say, you've been performing professionally your entire life. Magic has literally taken you all over the world. You're a very respected performer. You've won multiple competitions. You've created some amazing magic. You have the career that most magicians would dream of when they think about being a professional magician. If you said, well, you could achieve this by the end of your career, they would be over the moon. What have you got left on your magical bucket list? Are any other tricks on the horizon? Any other things that you want to do that you haven't done yet?
I haven't finished getting as good as I hope I can be at Cabaret. I'd be disappointed if that journey is not over, because I think, and I was really getting it. It's one of my few pandemic disappointments, because I've had an all right year. Is that last March? Was it not March? Last February, I had one of the best gigs I've done ever, and I'm going, yeah, I'm really getting the hang of this, and the work was coming in for that, so I was going to be getting better at it. I have to restart that and do more of that. That's what I want to be doing, and it suits my lifestyle now. I've got another 10 to 15 years of enjoying my girls the children at home in their primary school, so they'll be around. During that, I would rather be doing 2 days away a week for doing a cabaret, rather than busy all weekend like I used to be with 2 or 3 parties. If I have the choice, I may not have the choice. My main ambition is to be able to retire.
Yeah.
I love doing this, but I don't need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although I did notice I'd need to find something like running. One of the things I noticed in the pandemic, during the lockdown period, is I was a much nicer person to be around after I'd done a show.
Mm.
It is certainly a release and a rejuvenation of me. But having noticed that, I made sure that if I wasn't working much that week, and during the rejuvenation of the business, I haven't been performing every week. There's been great big chunks of not working. then I make sure I go and do something else to get that energy back in me and to get that release. Like go for a run. It has the same release of endorphins and use of energy and all that. You know, it's yeah.
That's great. And one final question. You know, you talked about you've got 2 girls that are primary school age, and obviously you joined the family business back when Peter trained you to be a magician. Are your girls going down the same route?
My older daughter is definitely the more I love my daddy, I want to be him type thing, but not a natural performer. The younger one is a show off naturally. And if they want to, I will help them and advise them in everything. The childhood I had was very much, we will support you in what you do and what you choose to do. I will try and do the same thing. If they want to do this, then right. But you know, I got the life that I was after but I didn't try and do anything else. Who knows? You know, very similar skills to the ones that suit being a magician is barrister. It's a lot of preparation for a little bit of showing off.
Yes, actually. Never thought of it that way, but you are right. Yeah.
Yeah. And standing up and being the show off. I mean, it's similar is being a teacher, but that is much more of an endurance role rather than a sprint role, which is what we do. I think. I mean, endurance. I'll be describing more trade show, right? Like I said before, that style doesn't suit me. So I would my aim as a parent, our aim as parents, I should say, is to open up the world, and they can make their choice. If they want to be a magician, then I'm in a good position to help them with that. One of my goddaughters is a dancer, and she's probably going to be a choreographer. She's 18 now. That puts me in a good position to get her some good work experience.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be helpful. You know, I wouldn't be disappointed whatever they choose to do. No.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. That's really, really cool. Richard, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. You are one of the good guys in magic. You really are. And your reputation precedes you for all the right reasons. And I implore anybody that's watching this to go onto your shop, support you.
It is all about the sales for you, isn't it? All the time.
Not at all. I mean, here's the thing, and I'll be completely honest with you, right? Okay. I do a review show. So every single week I look at 4 products, and I see so many terrible tricks, Richard. So many awful tricks. And I've spoken to people about this, where I spoke at Scott Alexander. We talked about Scott Alexander off camera earlier. He said to me the other day, he said, I'm willing to bet that there's a magic product out there with how you can film tricks now on an iPhone and everything. He said there's probably a trick available as a download on Murphy's that the person had the idea for it in the morning, fleshed it out in the early afternoon, filmed it, edited it, uploaded it, and sent it to Murphy's. And by the following morning, it's out on sale. And there are so many terrible tricks. So, and I see so many of them. I literally buy tricks sometimes, learn them, just review them. Then I literally throw them in the bin. And so when I see a creator who I know has high standards, and I know because I've seen a lot of your material, I have to shout about it from the rooftops because I'm
very kind of you.
Death of seeing so much crap. I really am. And I want the people that are new into magic, and a lot of the people that watch this channel are newer into magic, I want them to realize the difference between a terrible trick and a really, really good trick. And I want them to understand that people like you, you care about the products that you put out. You wouldn't put something out unless it was worked in, unless it was commercial. And for me, that's really important. So it's not really about the sales, because
I was just teasing you.
I know. If it was all about the sales, we wouldn't have spent an hour and 20 minutes talking about your career. We would have just gone straight into the product. So it's not all about the sales, but I think that it's important that I do promote you as a creator, because you are really bloody good, to be perfectly honest.
There's a trick here sitting on my desk that I came up with 18 months ago. I solved its problems earlier this year, and I can't do anything with it until it can't be done well on Zoom. I could demonstrate it for you, but it would not be an enjoyable experience. I can't test it yet. I don't know if it works. I've solved its problems. No one's seen it yet. It's sitting over there taunting me.
So frustrating, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
so frustrating. It really, really is. Well, hopefully in the future we might be seeing something else from you. We won't have to wait 11 years maybe for another
No.
Richard Pinner product. Good. That's good. That's good. And will you be lecturing? I know you stepped away from the magic community and you stepped away really from lecturing. I mean, I know that you don't have any desire to spend all year traveling around the world and you have children at home. And I understand that because I've got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. But would you
me
be
too.
open?
Yeah. Same. Yeah.
Would you be open to doing lectures again?
Yes, I would. I didn't stop. In fact, much like doing close-up magic, I haven't stopped. I just don't try to. Well, I did. What was it? 2 or 3 years ago. I noticed that I hardly ever work. At the start of February. It's just a dead time, a completely dead time for me. So I pitched and tried to do a sort of English tour of magic for children, not children's magic. So I like strong magic in my show. It's not just entertainment, fooling people in that as well. And that was fun to do. And it was good to do it for a period of time because doing magic lectures is not very economic, but like doing a bunch of shows together, I did a whole bunch of them together. And so it was a nice lump at the end of it. It was a nice thing. And I would do lectures again. I just don't try. I'm tempted. I'm not sorry, tempted is the wrong word. I want to put a book out in a couple of years. I'll turn 50. And I quite like the idea of, I've done the long list. I could do a book of 50 tricks. I just don't like writing. So that's the barrier.
That's why people like Andy Gladwin exist.
I asked him. He's too busy. He's become far. It was the first call I made, and his answer is far too successful right now to worry about my tricks. So it might happen. It would ultimately be a vanity project anyway, because I hope the printing of the books would turn a profit. Certainly the hours spent on it wouldn't.
Yeah, I'd love to see a book by you, Richard. I think that would be amazing. So yeah,
I've got the long list. I'd like to say I haven't got the time, but that's always a lie. It's that I haven't chosen to make the time yet.
Exactly. Well, screw Andy Gladwin in a nice way. His loss, because I'd love to see that. So if you can make that happen, that'd be great. But one more time, thank you so much for coming on the show, Richard. It's been amazing. What are your social media links so people can follow you, by the way? Do you have any particular social media channels? It's
all at Richard Pinner, but only if they're curious. I don't pitch. The big one for magicians now is I started the Little Shop of Magic Facebook page.
That's where everyone should really go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind people looking at my other stuff, but it's for the world rather than for magicians particularly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is the Little Shop of Magic on Facebook as well.
Not
just little.
Yeah, Little Shop of Magic.co.uk on Facebook. Yeah.
Perfect. Richard, thank you very much. You are amazing. Guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. I'm going to be back again tomorrow with another 3 videos. There'll be something at 9 o'clock, a shorts at 2, and a magic live at 6. So I'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks very much. Take care. Goodbye, everybody.